What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 243 of Catfish on Ice. It's a live edition with Chad Minton and Max Greenberg. As if this Preds offseason wasn't wacky enough, as if it wasn't unpredictable enough for you, as if it wasn't chaotic enough for you, Barry Trotz and Yaroslav Askarov, to another extent, says, hold my beer, because we're not done yet.
Oh, no.
What's up, Max? How you doing, man?
I am ready for this episode. I feel like I'm more ready than I normally am. I'm so ready to start talking on this one.
I am right there with you, man. All day, we have been talking about this. I've been chomping at the bit to get this episode out, talk about it, get my thoughts on it. The news dropped yesterday, and we've had a little bit of time to think about this a little bit, but a very fractured fan base right now, if that's fair to say, when it comes to, if you've been living under a rock right now, then let me enlighten you. Maybe you've been living out in the woods and you've been doing the whole survivalist thing where you've unplugged your phone and you haven't been on social media, and this is your first time learning this. There might be somebody out there, who knows, but odds are you already know this, but we're going to get into it big time. First of all, we got some YouTube commenters in here. Our buddy Buster. Yep. Thank you, Buster, for jumping in on YouTube. He says, yo. We have, of course, Johnny, otherwise known as Predemption, says in Paul Heyman voice, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Johnny Del Silvera, and prepare yourselves. Your Preds tribal chief, Max Greenberg, has some things to set straight about Yaroslav Askarov. So, yeah. You've got Johnny in your corner, and I suspect you have a lot of people in your corner on this.
People in yours.
Hey, I threw Stone Cold Steve Austin out there. That's me. Like, if we're going wrestling, if we're going WWE. But anyway, we're going to get into it. So, obviously, our opening face-off tonight, everybody, is going to be all about Yaroslav Askarov saying he wants out of Nashville. Yep. He is done. He wants a trade request. He says he's not, and that's the big part of this news is not even that he wants a trade. Right. It's that he said he's not coming to Milwaukee Admirals training camp. That's the big part of the story. That's there, Max.
That's the part I'm like, well, we'll get into it, but that's the part where I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, that's whoa. That makes you say whoa. That's what has the fan base turning a little sour on him. And we're talking about, outside of your main starters like Yossi and Saros and Forsberg, he's like the most popular player among the organization. I mean, there's so many Askarov stands out there that just, we've talked about this a ton. This fan base has grown so much and so passionate about the baby Preds, otherwise known as the Milwaukee Admirals, and that segment of fans have had a rough go of it lately when it comes to loving those youngsters, when it comes to the fact that Cody Glass is now traded. Yep. On a lesser extent, Igor Afanasyev was traded. But you just think about everything that's happening. Philip Tomasino does not have a solidified role with his team. No. So it's just a lot of things are happening right now that's freaking those types of fans out that love the younger part of this roster. So, got to get into it a lot here. We're gonna bring back the infamous segment, back by popular demand. We have to. Explain Yourself is going to open up the episode tonight. Max threw out a tweet that I would say in our little small world went viral. Maybe in Maine.
Believe it.
In our small world, you went viral. Maybe not viral when it comes to internet terms, but
views and stuff. Never like this. Like I was telling Chat before we went live. Like I'm even today. Like I'll turn off my phone. I'll go back on. I'll have 20 notifications from Twitter alone because of this tweet. I was stunned that it got this much.
Well, we're gonna throw your tweet up on the screen. I think you've got over 600 likes. Like just
something like
crazy exposure. We are going to, but you're going to have to explain yourself on that tweet.
Oh, yeah.
Buster jumps in and says, I've been saying for a while now that Askarov was not the type of personality that Trotz desires on the team.
It very much seems like it.
Culture means so much to Trotz. That's what Buster says on YouTube. Very good point. We're going to break that down. I am on the other side of it. I understand both sides, but I'm on the other side of it, and I will explain myself as well. because I got some pushback on it, and I think I'm in the minority. There are other fans that might agree with me, but I think I'm in the minority siding with Askarov. I don't agree with being a little childish and saying he's not going to come to the training camp. I think that's the wrong way to go about it. But the foundation of how he feels, I understand it. But before we do that, Ryan Johansen, ex-Predator, but still a arguably a top 10, definitely a top 20 player in this franchise's history, hits another hurdle in his career. It gives me really scary Ryan Ellis vibes in terms of we don't know what injury he's dealing with, and it looks like the Flyers are looking to terminate his contract via putting him on waivers. Ryan Johansen and his agent have filed a grievance. There's a weird hip injury going on. Flyers are saying he didn't disclose his injuries. Johansen in his camp is going to go to the NHLPA and file a grievance. He's owed one more year of $8 million salary, $4 million of that from the Predators' retained salary. So the Predators are still very much involved in this very complex situation.
Yeah. I mean, there's things about it we're going to talk about, but the biggest thing I can say, starting off is, I just hope that Johansen's okay from a mental and physical standpoint. Last year we nothing didn't work out in Colorado. Didn't seem like he really ever fit in there. Seemed to really take a toll on him mentally. Then when he got to Philly, dude wasn't given a chance. Now he gets this. I mean, there's other parts that we're going to talk about, but I'll admit, it is going to be hard for me to really talk about this and feel like have a ton of conviction because the guy from a mental and physical health standpoint, that's what comes first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So we're gonna break that down. We got to start previewing the upcoming season because it's really coming at us fast. Training camp is going to be here in a month. So we're going to start previewing each part of the team, really diving deep into each player a little bit more. And so tonight, we are going to preview the Preds defensive corps, their projected starting defensemen, and also the extras, the ones that we think can get into the lineup either as a rotational player or through injuries. We'll even get a little bit into the prospect pool and talk about, are there some defensemen out there that maybe could get a call-up? And also, of course, will the Predators need to add more to that defense down the road? So we will preview that. Also, this is our first live episode since Cody Glass got traded. I did jump on and do a quick episode solo that's up on all of the podcast platforms and YouTube right now. When I first broke down the Cody Glass trade solo, but now I got Max with me and I want to get his thoughts on it. I want to talk more about what that means and his thoughts on it. So we'll do that as well. We got to do some Titans talk as well. Titans time with Max because we got a couple preseason games under our belt. So I want to get Max's thoughts on what he thinks this Titans team can actually do. Can they outperform very low preseason expectations? I mean, there's not a lot of hype around this team in terms of like being a playoff team or anything, but I want to get Max's thoughts personally on how he feels. Is this team trending in the right direction? Could they be a little bit better than what we first realized? So that'll be fun to talk about. So yeah, that's what we got for you. Episode 243, live edition of Catfish on Ice, presented by BetterHelp. We'll tell you more about our sponsor, BetterHelp, later in this episode, and of course, DraftKings as well. Promo codes THPN for offers on both of those amazing sponsors, and of course, we are part of the Hockey Podcast Network. So let's go ahead and get this on the screen. This story with Askarov was first broken by Kevin Weeks. Yep. So we want to give him total credit. He did his classic little camera angle where you can only see the top of his head, and he's always in a random location. He's become synonymous with that, and so we just love that. But also local Preds beat writer John Glennon, who's actually been on this podcast before as a guest way back when. John Glennon put out his thoughts on this trade request as well, but there's of course, a ton of opinions out here on this. So we're going to put it on the screen for our YouTube viewers to see, of course. And if you're not subscribed to YouTube yet, then please do so. Just go to YouTube, look up Catfish on Ice, you'll see it. So there it is. This is from NHL Updates on Facebook. That's who came up with that graphic. But yeah, so John Glennon there. Statement from the Preds Trotz on Askarov trade request. Quote, we are aware of the report today, and our expectation is for the player to report to training camp and compete for a job in September. Come on. Hey, Max, I love Trotz, but that's political talk there, man. That's him. That's him saying what he has to say. What else do you want him to say? I don't really buy a lot of stock into that quote. Not at all. He says what he has to say there. I think that there's a good chance this could be Trotz's first misstep in his tenure as a general manager. And I know everyone's focused on Askarov being the one that's making the wrong decision here, but the guy was drafted 11th overall. The last time a goalie got drafted higher than 11th overall in the NHL was all the way back to 2005 when Carey Price was drafted. And we know how Carey Price turned out to be. So it doesn't happen very often when goalies get drafted where Askarov was drafted. So the guy has every right to have a little bit of an ego. We know that he oozes with confidence. We know how he carries himself. And when he was drafted in 2020, that was the first instant thing I thought about at that time was, whoa, first of all, we're drafting a goalie at 11th overall? Like, that is insane. And I instantly thought, what the hell does that mean for UC Saros in a couple years? I mean, you didn't have to be Nostradamus to see this coming all the way back to 2020. You really didn't. And so it's finally happening. We've been talking about this day possibly coming for over a year now on this podcast. So it's finally happening, and none of us should be surprised at all that Askarov is not happy. He sees himself as not and I'm going to let you go, Max, real quick, but let me just speak my piece real quick. No one thinks that Askarov never said, like, oh, I expect to be a starter over Saros. Where we're at with it is Askarov doesn't even know if he can compete to be in the NHL this year is the problem. And he's got 1 year left on his ELC, and then there's no pathway for him here anymore. And he sees that. His agent sees that. And you know the talent he possesses, so he's got to look out for himself. And I know everyone's like, oh, you got to be a team-first guy, you got to show up to training camp. But the guy is a young player, and he's one of the best goalie prospects in the league, if not the best. It's arguable. He's top 3 at least.
I think so, definitely.
So, I mean, you can't fault the guy for feeling the way he feels. In reality, should he do the right thing and come to the Milwaukee Admirals training camp? Yeah, he should. But I'm not going to fault the guy that much. He's betting on himself. He wants a trade. He wants to go somewhere and prove himself. And he might go to a team that's not going to instantly make him a starter, but he wants to at least get that fair shot. And we can call it off. Robbie Stanley said it so great on X earlier or a couple days or yesterday or whatever. We are living in fantasy land if we ever thought that Askarov was going to be able to do anything in training camp to overtake a $1.5 million per year goalie that the Predators just signed in Scott Wedgwood. It just wasn't going to happen. But you go ahead, Max.
Yeah. Do you want me to go with the explain myself or?
Yeah, and I'll go with explain yourself, and then we'll do mine. But yes, I'm going to go ahead and go on with your explain yourself. I'll get the tweet that went viral for you, basically. I'll get that on the screen for our YouTube viewers. But go ahead and give us your stance on this Askarov situation.
All right, so let me try to unpack this incredibly complex situation going on. And I'll say a few things. Number one, you're absolutely right. It's not a surprise that it's gotten to this point. Ever since, we knew at some point the Preds were essentially going to have to choose between Yaroslav Askarov and UC Saros. The two, no one ever thought the two could coexist because there's been a small contingent of Preds fans saying, even after Saros got signed, saying maybe trade Saros in a few years. And I don't buy any of it. Again, if you're signing Saros to the contract he signed, you're going pretty much all in on him. Like, that's just that situation. And everyone, especially after that Saros contract got signed, everyone knew the writing was on the wall. And it was a matter of, when, not if, Askarov is going to get unhappy and want out. So, again, I totally get where Askarov is coming from with wanting to go to an organization that, is going to give them a better shot. And I'm not even saying, and I don't blame him for that trade request. And I'm not even saying he has to do it for the good of the team. That's not, where my opinion is coming from. But again, the part that is really irking me about this, the part where he says, I will not report back to the AHL. Okay, I get you're an 11th overall pick here, but you still got to prove yourself before you can get to certain points saying, I'm not going back to the AHL. He's played 3 total NHL games, hasn't even started all 3 of them, started 2 of those games. He has 2 NHL starts under his belt at all. That's not even enough to be recognized as a legit backup in the NHL. He struggled in the most recent playoffs in the AHL. He got benched in those playoffs. He has been far from consistent. He's had a lot of really, really good moments, but he's been far from consistent in the basically 2 years he's been in Milwaukee. And it's just like, look, I get where you're coming from as far as, wanting to go to an organization where, you're going to have a better shot. But like to say like, I'm not going to play in the AHL where I struggled, the way I kind of look at that is like if you have a job, like probably an entry-level job, and you have a lot of promise, but you mess up a little bit and people are like, okay, you're probably not ready to take that next step yet, but you're upset because you're not getting promoted. It's like, and also another thing I want to say too is Yaroslav Askarov is not just playing for his future in Nashville, which doesn't really happen anymore. He's playing as a stud goaltender in general. He's looking to show himself to other teams who might be interested in him, because other teams will be interested in him, especially if he continues to do well in the AHL. And it's just like, look, I get you're not happy. I get the situation you're in is not ideal. But you got to chill out by saying you're not going to report to Milwaukee. If you think you're that good and you should be in the NHL, no questions asked, you got to prove it at a certain point. Is Yaroslav Askarov, even despite the talent?
Where is it? But where is he supposed to prove it? Okay, so yeah, he proved it. He has proved it in Milwaukee for 2 straight years with a .910 save percentage. Did he not do so well in the playoffs? Okay, well yeah, guess what? He's a young goalie. So we can look at the goalies in the NHL who just had bad playoff runs. We still think they're great. Igor Shesterkin just had a horrible playoff run on his own right. Andrei Vasilevsky looked terrible this past season. Saros looked terrible. Had the same numbers as Kevin Lankinen, his backup. So goalies are all streaky. They all go through tough times. But again, I will circle back to it, Max. He is a world-class, highly drafted goalie. Now, again, I will say he's going about it the wrong way. I think we're all on the same page there. I don't agree with him coming out and saying, oh, I'm not going to Milwaukee Admirals camp. He could definitely handle it better, and maybe his agent is giving him horrible advice, or maybe, just maybe, he's a really young, fiery competitor, and he's thinking a little bit emotionally right now. And, I'm not saying it's entirely right how he's handling it, but I see where he's coming from. I really do. There is no pathway for him in Nashville anymore. For a player his talent level, there is no pathway for him anymore here. I mean, we are living in fantasy land if we think it's any other way. Right. And that's what his agent sees, and that's what he sees. So I think we can both be kind of right here. Is he handling it the wrong way? Sure. But I'm still holding strong with my original thought. He has every right to demand a trade. Could he handle it better publicly? Sure. But he deserves to be out. He does. He deserves to go. I think Columbus is a great landing spot for him. I mean, let's not forget about the LA Kings, who have no set of strong goalies options for themselves right now. If he went to LA, he would be in competition. He wouldn't be the starter. If he went to Columbus, he would also be in competition. But I think he would actually have a really good chance to be one of their top starters, or at least split starts 50-50. And I think Columbus is one of the up-and-coming teams with one of the best prospect pools in the league, where in 3 or 4 years, Columbus could be a force. So there's options for Askarov, and so you got to think his agent's also looking at it that way. He's thinking on the behalf of the player, not the organization. That's what agents do. And, you want Askarov to be team first, but he clearly is human and sees I'm not part of this team's long-term future. So this really isn't my organization anymore. Only by technicality am I a part of this organization anymore. I think that's where Yaroslav Askarov sees himself now. So that's why he's doing what he's doing.
I hear you. And a few things I'm going to say, with what you just said there is, number one, talking about, other goaltenders in the NHL who have struggled. UC Saros didn't have the best playoff. Igor Shesterkin struggled regular season. And again, Andrei Vasilevsky had an up and down year. But here's the thing. Like it or not, those guys are NHL proven legit. You're going to be scrutinized a lot more when you're in the position that Askarov is in the AHL. You have a lot more to prove, and you have a lot less room for error. I'm not saying he can't get better, but the AHL playoffs are a big thing. When you struggle to the point of getting benched in the AHL, like it or not, that one thing, it's going to be weighed pretty heavily. And another thing, too, is, Barry Trotz. And one thing I've put a lot of weight on with this whole thing is Barry Trotz, a few days after free agency, he talked on 102.5 The Game. You should go look it up if you haven't. It was actually a really good show that Willie Donick and Derek Mason did, having Barry Trotz on the show. And they were asking him, okay, what's going to be the plan for Yaroslav Askarov now that you have UC Saros up for 8 years? And, he was talking about that, and he basically said, look, the goal right this year, right now, the goal is to have him in the AHL because number one, the NHL is a league where it's a very long-term developmental league for all positions, but especially goaltenders. They take a long time, and he's said before that you could never over-marinate goaltender prospects. And basically what he's saying is the biggest thing for these guys is they have to be playing. You can't put him in the NHL. If you were to put him in the NHL, he's going to be behind UC Saros, who's a workhorse goaltender. He's probably going to start 60 games or so. And when you have him playing sparingly, it's not really good for his development. And Barry Trotz also talked about Mitch Korn, too, who's one of the best goaltending coaches we've ever seen. And it seems Barry Trotz does not think Askarov is ready. Mitch Korn doesn't think he's ready. I'm sure Andrew Brunette doesn't think he's ready. And he also said in this show on 105 The Game, saying, if a trade comes up, I'll take it. I'm not just holding Yaroslav Askarov here. We're gonna do what we can to get the best return. And that's probably where I think Trotz is being a little bit stubborn, try and get the absolute best return. He should definitely accept.
Well, he should do that. I don't have any problem with that. He should hold out for the best return. That's his job as a general manager.
That's
so
true,
yeah, no one's mad about that.
Right here, he's probably got to accept he doesn't have quite as much leverage as he did, or he maybe not even had that leverage. But you know what I'm saying here. But anyway, the thing I'm saying about Askarov is, look, I understand it's not ideal situation, but it's truly in his best interest when he's had multiple coaches saying, we don't think you're ready yet. And Trotz basically also saying, the way I see it also is.
Hold on, time out real quick. I'm going to let you finish your thought, but just on that, just because I got to get something in. Clearly, there are plenty of other scouts and teams out there who would disagree with him not being ready, because there have been plenty of trade inquiries on Askarov. They've fallen through, but there's a lot of debate. Now, I'm on the side of you. I don't think he's ready to be a starter.
Not at all.
He's not ready to be a starter, but the guy is definitely. He feels like he's tapped out at the NHL. His agent feels that way, clearly. But I think that this was already a foregone conclusion, what's happening right now. It was inevitable when Saros was extended for 8 years. It wasn't when Scott Wedgwood was signed. That was just obvious that they were going to do that, or they were going to keep Kevin Lankinen, which is still crazy. That guy hasn't been re-signed yet to another team, Kevin Lankinen. But it was always one or the other. I mean, it really was. We saw this coming, that the organization was going to have to either hitch their wagon to Saros long term, and Max, you brought this up as well, and I thought it was really smart of you to bring this up, and other people have brought this up. you're talking about two different GMs. You know, David Poile was the one that drafted Yaroslav Askarov.
Draft Askarov here.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that's a really important point that we have to talk about in this whole situation is Trotz is not necessarily married to Askarov. And from Askarov's point of view, he probably sees that as well. Like, this guy didn't draft me. He doesn't want me here long term. They just signed Askarov or Saros to 8 years. So he's the guy long term. I'm never going to be the starter here. Again, he's handling it a little bit childishly, but he's also a very young and childish player. You know, so I mean, I'm not making excuses for the guy. He could be handling it better. But we're not talking about like a mid-20s, upper 20s veteran who should know better. I mean, this guy is definitely going to probably learn from some of these missteps. I think he did himself a disservice. It actually hurts Trotz's leverage that he's done this because now teams, I mean, it's a bad situation, but look, this is the fire you play with. And if you want to be mad at anybody, maybe you should look at David Poile. What were you thinking when you took a goalie at 11th overall in 2020? But again, when you change GMs, the thinking changes. We have to ask ourselves, Max, if David Poile was still in charge right now, would things have worked out differently? Hypothetically speaking, do you think Poile would have gone with Askarov, his draft pick, and not re-signed Saros? You got to think he might have.
Very possible.
Yeah. So I think that's the most important point of this entire debate. Yeah. I think we can both come to the middle on this when we think about this. You had a change in front office leadership. Yes, and Askarov is no longer the centerpiece of that thought. Trotz went with Saros. He chose Saros. And then he went out and signed Wedgwood, which isn't even really, I don't think that's really a factor in all this. I think Askarov would have wanted a trade no matter what it was.
Yes,
he doesn't want to be a backup. He doesn't want to be a backup for 8 years, I'll promise you that. So,
they can't coexist that long.
So, I think he wants a trade because he doesn't want to be a backup for the next 2 or 3 years, not just this season. If Saros was only signed for 2 years, or if the Predators were in a situation, hypothetically speaking, where they kind of had a starting goalie, but they weren't married to him for more than maybe a year or two, then I think Askarov would stay here. I think he'd be like, oh, yeah, I'm going to go beat this guy out. But Askarov in his camp sees the writing on the wall. I can promise you that they understand how good Saros is, and they see it as my client. If you're looking at Askarov's agent, he's probably thinking, my client is never going to be the centerpiece here. He's never going to be the starting goalie here. My job as his agent is to make sure he gets maximized where he can go and be a starter one day. That's the agent's job to do that. So that's really what this all is. It's 8 years for Saros. That's what it is. It's not Wedgwood. Let's stop bringing up Wedgwood. It has nothing to do with Wedgwood.
It really doesn't. Well, I'll finish out my thoughts, saying, these things. And this first one is probably going to come across biased, but it is what it is. You were talking a few minutes ago about how, I mentioned how Trotz and Mitch Korn very much don't view Askarov as ready, it seems. Others do. Here's the thing with that one point is Mitch Korn, with the track record he has and what he's accomplished in this league, he's one of those guys whose opinions I really just weigh that much more than most other coaches or whatever. Like he's like, I know it's a different sport because I'm also compared to the Titans, but he's like a Bill Callahan caliber coach for goaltenders. Like Bill Callahan was one of the best offensive line coaches we've seen. Mitch Korn is one of the better goaltending coaches we've seen. Like I just trust his opinion that much. And that's a huge factor for me too. And with the whole thing with Saros being signed 8 years, look, I get it. And I'm not, and I don't, and again, I want to make one thing very clear one more time. If Yaroslav Askarov would have just stopped at saying, I want out and I would want to go to a team where I have a better outlook, I would not be criticizing the dude at all. But here's the way I see the whole thing with the Saros extension is Saros obviously got signed. Okay, that's a sign as they don't see me as good enough. And And then Barry Trotz also saying, look, we're not like in a rush to trade Askarov, but if something comes up, we might take it. And again, Askarov is not just going to Milwaukee, shouldn't just go to Milwaukee to play for his future on the Preds at all. Again, he doesn't really have that. He's playing to show himself as a stud goaltender, just in general, like trying, maybe auditioning for other teams. With the Saros extension, showing what they think of Askarov, and Trotz basically saying we're open to trading him. That should light a fire under him. That should motivate him, not make him want to sit out. And again, that's just the way I see it there.
I totally get it. I do. I mean, I threw out a really quick video yesterday. You can go see it on my Twitter if you want to check out my really raw thoughts on it. But my main thing that I'm gonna stick hard with here is that when it's all said and done, he does deserve to seek out a trade. I think we're all in agreement there.
Yes.
He's just handling it the wrong way. I think we can all come to the center when it comes to that. So yeah, that's our explain ourselves. Max brings a very, very strong argument for sure. And I don't think we're all that far apart on how we feel about it. I don't think Smashville should be freaking out like they are, though.
Really, really strongly worded in what we're saying and very impassioned.
Well, and I think that Preds fans need to pump the brakes a little bit and calm down. Like they're like kind of freaking out, especially like
you, honestly.
Preds
I probably overreacted a little bit. I can admit that.
No, well, Preds Facebook is handling it just as calmly as you would expect them to, which is not calmly at all.
No.
Pretty much that entire every Facebook group I've come across, they've turned on Askarov. They hate him now. Get the guy out of here. Run him out of town.
Opposite, to be honest with you, I thought a lot of them were turning.
Really
bad. I mean, at least from what I heard, I heard that there were several people who were basically saying the Preds will never live this down. They're losers. Like this. Like Askarov is the guy that like. I think it's really that split.
I mean, it's definitely split. I mean, there's definitely people who don't know how to handle this whole situation for sure. But I mean, in reality, I think that he's going to get traded. I think Columbus is probably the best place for him. You got to be worried.
This one, but Chicago, I've heard, is in contention. That would be tough for me to sleep if that happened.
Yeah, and I wrote an article about that on Predlines. I did. I cannot see any scenario where Trotz deals Askarov to a division rival. Because guess what? You are rolling the dice and you're taking a major gamble that not immediately, but we're talking 3, 4, 5 years down the road. Askarov can come back to be your worst nightmare in this division. Yes. So do not trade him within the
yeah.
And that's why I say Columbus is the perfect place to send him. Because even if he flourishes and he becomes a great goalie in this league, you only got to deal with him twice a year. Not a big deal. Columbus is my place that I would love to send him. And I got to think Columbus would love to have him. Looking at their goalie situation.
I'd be okay with
Carolina could be. The point is, there's plenty of people out there, teams out there, who have unsettled goalie situations on their roster. It doesn't mean that Askarov is just going to get immediately put into the starting role. I don't think there's a single team out there where he's just immediately going to be the starter. But there are a lot of better places for Askarov to go than his current situation in Nashville. Sure. And that's another reason why I think it's totally fair that he's asking for a trade, is because there are. I mean, we can go down the list of teams. There's at least 5 to 10 teams out there who are a much better situation for Askarov to be in right now for his personal career pathway than where he's at in Nashville. I think that's the point.
Again, the trade request, I've said many times, the trade request, not the problem. The not going back to Milwaukee, that's where I'm getting onto him.
Yeah, for sure. Buster says, yes, we can all agree that Askarov should want to trade, but Trotz was already trying to trade him, so this public drama was not needed, and it hurt his chances of being traded quickly now. I get where you're coming from, Buster, but at the same time, again, he's a young guy. I mean, we're coming down on this guy like he's like some seasoned veteran. He knows how to deal with this. Like, can we take a step back and calm down a little bit?
Yeah,
I mean, you're acting like, I mean, some of us are acting like the guy came out and publicly blasted the organization and said Nashville's a horrible team and I hate them. No, he just wants out. I mean, the only thing that I think Askarov's doing wrong, and he looks a little bit unprofessional here, is not reporting to Milwaukee Admirals training camp. Okay, but he's young. He's a young guy. Are we gonna really take it that personal? Come on now. Let's not take it that personal. All right, like let's calm down a little bit. He's a young guy. He oozes with confidence. Yes, he has an ego. Yes, he has. I mean, we used to love that. Preds fans loved it when he was here. Now all of a sudden they don't like it. I mean, you got to take the good with the bad when it comes to guys like that, and that's the type of guy he is.
I personally, of course, it's kind of like Trotz, but I'm also one of those guys who's just a believer in like culture. Like culture really matters and mindset.
Yeah.
So like that's a lot of where my opinion stems from too. Like I'm one of those guys. Like a lot of people kind of different, but I'm always gonna be one of those guys where the team up with the logo on the front of the jersey is way more important than the name on the back.
Well, yeah, and look, I respect the hell out of Barry Trotz that he's building this type of culture. I do. I love that. I love that he's building the type of culture that he's doing. And he definitely sees something behind closed doors that made him go with Saros over Askarov. On top of the fact that obviously Saros is a way more of a proven commodity than Askarov is. So, I mean, that's it right there. But anyway, so good stuff there. We're all emotional here, but I appreciate all the good stuff. And I don't think we're all that far apart from how we feel on all this.
I don't really think so either.
But we're going to move on here. This is a live edition of episode 243 of Catfish and Ice, presented by DraftKings and also sponsored by BetterHelp. We're going to tell you about BetterHelp here right now. And so now more than ever, everybody, online therapy is really important. Taking care of your personal priorities, putting yourself first and your priorities first. And time is of the essence. And we have so many other priorities in our lives, whether it's getting the kids to soccer practice, whether it's working on that big work project, whatever it may be. Sometimes we forget the top priorities is ourselves and our mental health. So that is where BetterHelp comes into play. And online therapy can be so beneficial to you. And with BetterHelp, if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapist with no additional charge. That's such an amazing thing that this company does for you, is that it's online. You do the questionnaire and you match with a therapist that can be perfect for you. But putting your mental health first and making that a priority is so important. Setting those boundaries, figuring out what's right for you is so important, especially in the world we live in right now that is so unpredictable and so crazy. So when you feel like you have no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy are more important than ever. So never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/THPN today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/THPN. Again, that's 10% off your first month with our promo code THPN. Put yourself first, people. Your mental health is important. All right, so let's move along here. So let's squeeze this in real quick, Max, because, all right, so episode 242, I went solo. We know that it's now old news that Cody Glass is traded. No one even is thinking about that anymore. But at the very least, I want to think about the future ripple effects of Cody Glass being traded and what that means and how the Predators, in my opinion, were backed into a corner and they didn't really have a choice. Right. It's unfortunate. It really is. Yeah. I don't think Cody Glass got a fair shake at it. And I think if everything was perfect and we lived in a perfect world, I think that Barry Trotz would have loved to have kept Cody Glass. But there's that pesky salary cap, and you got to deal with that. So Max, let me just get how your just your thoughts on the future with Cody Glass gone. All right, let's say you have to pick, because I still don't. I mean, we're going to talk a little bit more about Ryan Johansen, this new development of maybe getting $4 million more in cap space. That's very unexpected. But if it comes down to having to choose between Tomasino or Parson, and I think we've talked about this a little bit before in the past, and you've said that Tomasino has the higher ceiling, but Parson is the safer player.
I think so.
But what are you getting from all this? Because I want to get your thoughts on it, man.
Are you talking about like the Cody Glass trade? And
yeah, just the Cody Glass trade, and just what that means for the future of this team.
Yeah, first of all, and I think a lot of you have heard me say this, I wasn't surprised really at all that this happened. You know, Cody Glass, I mean, again, let me just say, first of all, Cody Glass, I've said it before, great dude. He's like a really, really genuine, caring guy, but it just got to a point where it seemed like he really, he just really lost fit within this organization. You know, number one, they needed the salary cap, which they weren't going to have. He had it by factors in and out of his control. He had a really rough year last year. And honestly, if I'm being totally honest here, we talk about, you know, the culture of, you know, mental toughness, all that kind of stuff that Barry Trotz wants. I don't want to really try and trash on Cody Glass. I just don't really think he was a full fit from what Barry Trotz and Andrew Brunette want in their culture. I honestly lost confidence over this past year that it was going to really work out for him as a member of the future. It was hard to see him really get, and we saw like towards the end of last year after the trade deadline, he was scratched out of the lineup so many times. I mean, the writing was, if it wasn't before, like at that point, the writing was firmly on the wall that Cody Glass's time as a Nashville Predator was going to come to an end. And with him making $2.5 million and where the team is going now, it just made sense, honestly. It's a tough thing. It sucks, but it was one of those.
I don't think they had a choice. They didn't have a choice.
Yeah, like let's
just simplify it.
They had to do it. If there's anything with the whole thing that I regret is how much we paid to get rid of them. But again, we needed the cap space, and good thing Barry Trotz had that draft capital to work with in order to make that deal happen.
Well, and you know, yeah, that's a good point. And then he goes to Pittsburgh, where he's going to have a chance to at least play.
Yeah.
Daily Faceoff has him as a fourth.
This was about Cody Glass too. Like him being in Nashville, being scratched was a waste of everyone's time.
Yeah, and so being in Pittsburgh now for him, from Glass's perspective, maybe he gets some mentorship from those veterans.
Sidney Crosby, I mean, what a better mentor center.
And I will tell you, and you take it with a grain of salt, because a lot of these are just armchair GMs. But I always love seeing the opposite perspective from another team's fan base. And I had a hard time finding any Pittsburgh Penguins fans who were excited about Cody Glass. They were like, oh, you know, we're getting another scrub or whatever. And you saw Cody Glass.
Nothing. They gained a third-round pick to get him.
But you saw Cody. You saw that. You saw where Cody Glass chirped back.
Yeah.
He was like,
props to Cody Glass there. It seemed like he took it pretty well.
He was like, just give me a chance, and then he put like LOL on there or whatever.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. I look. We're all going to be rooting for Cody Glass. I hate that I have a hard time cheering for the Pittsburgh Penguins, but I can maybe make an exception for Cody Glass.
I could too.
The guy is just a really hard worker. He's a good guy. He cares. You can tell how much he cares about the game and how much he loves the game, how passionate he is about it, how good of a teammate he is, how he's going to leave it all out there every shift he plays. So how can you not root for a guy like that? Yeah. Unfortunately, when you go heavy in free agency, these kinds of things happen. It's the cost of trying. I don't want to say trying to buy a Stanley Cup, but that's kind of what Trotz is doing. He's trying to buy a Stanley Cup. He really is.
Play at the NHL level. There's no doubt about it.
Let's just call it like it is. Trotz is trying to buy a Stanley Cup this offseason. Yeah. So we'll see if it actually works out for him. But and not just this season. I think people are getting too caught up in he's trying to buy a Stanley Cup this season. But even if they don't, he's trying to buy a Stanley Cup window. He's buying a Stanley Cup window.
Yes. Not
just a Stanley Cup season. So he's trying to buy his way into opening up that Stanley Cup window again that has been shut for the Predators for the past 4 years probably. So That's what Trotz is doing. But when that kind of thing happens, your Cody Glasses of the world, even possibly your Philip Tomasino's of the world, get pushed out. Because I'm telling you right now, it is not a foregone conclusion that Philip Tomasino is going to be on this team for very much longer. I'm just calling it like it is.
Especially because one other thing that's happened since we recorded, it just came out today that the Edmonton Oilers did not match the offer sheets given to Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway, who are now members of the St. Louis Blues. Like, it doesn't seem like Tomasino and or Parson will be offer sheeted, but you never know. And also, part of my opinion with that is the day of the Cody Glass trade, it was announced earlier that Holloway and Broberg were being offer sheeted. You don't think that increased Trotz's urgency to be like, okay, I got to create some cap space here because I don't want to lose my guys to
offer. And also, let's not forget that Andrew Burnett's been very critical of Philip Tomasino.
Yes.
He has not minced words about, I need to see more from this guy.
Neither is Trotz, really.
I need to see more from this guy. I need him to buy into the culture. I need him to, and we keep saying this is a culture-oriented team now.
Yes.
And I mean, you see, you got Stamkos in there now. We know he's the epitome of culture.
Yeah.
I mean, Jonathan Marchessault is a Conn Smythe winner. Philip Forsberg, it just had a 90-plus point season.
Roman Josi, leader.
Ryan O'Reilly got signed last offseason. Let's not forget that this guy's still here. He got this whole ball rolling. Ryan O'Reilly, the Ryan O'Reilly signing got the Barry Trotz era kicked off.
Really did, 100%.
So I mean, this is no shade at Cody Glass, but when you do things like this, he gets squeezed out. It's not a knock on Cody Glass, but he can't hold a candle to those players, and the fact that he is his window is so narrow in terms of he has to be a center. He has to be a primary center. That's his role. Whereas Philip Tomasino can play wing and he can do different things. Parsonen can play center or wing and does a lot of different things that Cody Glass doesn't necessarily do as effectively. So it makes Cody Glass a lot more expendable. And then when he was making $2.5 million, they really made him expendable. Whereas Parsonen, you can get him re-signed, I would hope, for just maybe a little more than $1 million per year. I think you can get the deal done.
If any more, a little more. I say guy only a little more than $1 million.
I think Tomasino is going to expect more.
How much
than Parsonen?
You think that much? I don't know. If that's the case, I'm kind of okay letting Tomasino go, to be honest.
I have a very weird thing in my gut that tells me that Tomasino is going to command a little bit more than Parsonen.
I don't know how I feel about that, but okay.
I could be wrong, but we'll see how it all shakes out. I mean, we're running out of time here.
Actually, no, that reminds me, to your point, I did see something once that someone is predicting Tomasino to get like $1.8 million. I'm like, whoa. Like, if that's the case, then I don't know.
Yeah. Johnny says, let me be on the record. Next season, I will root for the Penguins in 80 games as long as it means good things for Cody. Notice I didn't see 82 games. Yeah. It's really hard for me to... I mean, way back in the day, I'm calling out all those old school Catfish and Ice fans that maybe have been watching with us all along. But way back in the day, we did our most hated teams bracket.
I remember
on Catfish and Ice. We did a full bracket, and I'm pretty sure I would have to really I'm pretty sure the Blackhawks won the whole bracket, but I'm pretty sure the Penguins either made it to the final or they lost the Blackhawks. But I know the Penguins went deep too that bracket.
And too bad you guys were. I mean, maybe not too bad, but if you guys weren't doing like how many games, because honestly, if Blackhawks Penguins, the Blackhawks would have taken them in 5 or less.
Yeah. I would have to go way back to actually find that, but because I
actually do think I remember that video. I watched
that was the early days. That was the early days of the podcast. But yeah. So yeah, we'll root for him. We'll root for him. All right. So I think in the end, Parsonen definitely gets re-signed. It's a matter of when, not if. That's just me saying what I feel. And I think that Tomasino is such a toss-up right now. I really do. I would love for him to stay here. I still believe in his potential. But how many times are we going to keep going down this road of him being bounced in and out of the lineup, or when he is in, he's only getting like 12 minutes of ice time? Like, it's so hard for these guys to set themselves apart in this team and this organization right now.
Sorry, keep going.
No, no, that's all I was trying to say.
Oh, yeah, no. Another thing I'm going to say is going back to the most recent playoffs, at least of the forwards, because we know Spencer Sasson was there, and he'd been for a while, but of the guys who, like, really got recalled from Milwaukee, Juuso Parson was the only forward, and he actually played in the game, which that says a lot how they view him versus a lot of these other guys.
Well, and I respect Parson. I respect Parson and how he is just a no, he just does it. He just plays the job. He doesn't talk. He doesn't chirp. He doesn't talk. He doesn't chirp. He's no drama. And I'm not saying Tomasino's drama either. I'm just saying, like, he is very much just like, let's go out there and do the job. I thought he handled his reassignment to Milwaukee. He took it in stride and handled it as well as he could have possibly handled it.
Yaroslav Askarov could take a few notes. Sorry, I had to say that.
Oh, shots fired. All right. We're talking about a 7th rounder and an 11th overall pick, so I don't think that's entirely fair from you.
You're right.
But I get what you're saying. Brando on YouTube says, Yossi is going to retire here. Might as well fill in the pieces around him till then. Well, that's what Trotz is doing.
Seems
for sure.
Like he will.
Filling in the pieces around Yossi, around Forsberg, and around Saros. Because those 3 guys have been with this team back to the Poile days. And so that's where we're at with it. All right, good stuff there. Wanted to get Max's thoughts on that. Go back and listen to episode 242, where I did my solo episode, which was really fresh in the moment when the trade had just happened, if you want to get more thoughts on Cody Glass. All right, so now let's move along here, and let's talk a little bit about Ryan Johansen, a really weird, sticky situation. Yeah. Of course, let's refresh everybody's memory on Ryan Johansen. He was traded for basically nothing in 2023 by the Predators. Trivia question, who was it? I think a lot of Preds fans have already forgotten who the Predators traded for, player-wise, for Ryan Johansen.
Can I say it?
Oh, yeah, I know you know it. Oh, yeah, who doesn't even have a contract in the NHL, and he had a really – I don't even want to talk about his legal issues. But
whole other mess.
But all I can tell you is he is not currently under a contract in the NHL. That's all you need to know there. And the Predators, of course, retained salary to move on from Ryan Johansen. And, of course, that happened around the same time that Matt Duchene was bought out. So just a crazy offseason there. Yeah. But anyway, so Ryan Johansen, here's the news. This is reported heavily by Elliot Friedman, but I know a lot of other analysts out there also reported on it. But here's the complexity. Here's the basic nuts and bolts of this situation. So the Flyers acquired Ryan Johansen in March from the Avalanche, and Johansen never played a game for the Flyers. There was an injury. It didn't work out. He never played a game for them, and now they want to terminate his contract. They've put him on waivers, and there's this really ugly thing that's unfolding where to terminate a player's contract, you got to have serious, clear-cut reasons to do so. And from what I'm understanding, the Flyers' belief is that he did not disclose his injury. He's got a hip injury. He's got a serious injury now. He's got to get surgery. Who knows if Johansen's even going to be ready to start the season. And so the Flyers are upset. They would have never made that trade with the Avalanche if they had known this. And that's kind of where we're at with it right now, Max.
One of the things that is weirdest about it, and it's weird to even assume. It's weird to assume these may be intertwined. They may not. I don't know. But one thing that's kind of shady on the Flyers' part, in my opinion, it kind of makes me side with Johansen on this. Again, these may not be related, but whenever the Flyers acquired Johansen from the Avalanche, they put him immediately on waivers.
Yeah.
Like, what? And they put him back in the minors. Like, man, again, there's other reasons they could have made the trade. And I'm looking back, I'm pretty sure I remember there was, but like, that's just kind of thing where it's like, if you acquire a guy and put him on waivers, I'm going to kind of be more inclined to believe Johansen's side that he has a case here, because that's just kind of strange.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely strange. It's weird. Yeah, of course, you never want to see a player go through this. I mean, again, I'm getting Ryan Ellis vibes here,
Yeah.
and because
He was
if you remember,
also traded to the Flyers.
and that was just crazy how fast his career ended. It was awful.
Yeah.
So we hope that doesn't happen with Ryan Johansen as well. And who knows? But like again, a lot of the details we don't even know right now. But when it comes to the Predators, they could get $4 million extra in cap space. Which I mean, you want to talk about the salary cap crunch that they're in right now? They have a little over
a shot in the arm right there.
They have a little over $3 million in projected cap space right now. When they still have to not only think about Parson and Tomasino, but they also have to wonder about Stastny on a two-way contract. So people forget that he'll take up some salary too on his two-way deal.
And there's also Dante Fabro making $2.5 million. If you offload him, you got even
more.
more.
And we brought that up. We have, but I think
they're surprised they haven't done it. But we'll talk about that in a little bit.
I feel like the Predators really like the idea of having Fabro as a seventh defenseman because I mean, I know we believe that he should be a starter.
More than me, but I don't understand.
But like it's one of those things where I feel like they're in a weird situation for sure. Yeah. But we're gonna preview the defense here in a little bit. But when it comes to Ryan Johansen, we'll have to wait and see how this goes. I can't even begin to tell you where this is gonna land. In terms of, I think Johansen will probably get something. His grievance will return something, but I don't think he's going to get the complete contract that he wants. Like we saw this similar thing happen with Corey Perry last year.
Yeah, I don't know what's really going to happen. I mean, if there was a way to, it's not going to happen this way, but if there was a way to get the best of both worlds where Johansen kind of gets what he wants, but we also get the cap relief from the contract being terminated. I mean, if I could live in some fantasy world where that's a thing, hopefully that happens, but it's a really complicated matter. I honestly don't feel, totally right speaking on as far as, what's going to happen between the two parties. That's their business. I'm not quite as well informed of that maybe as I should be. I don't know. I just hope Johansen's okay. That's the biggest thing here.
Yeah, because he's such a good dude.
And less than the Preds cap situation. I just hope Johansen is okay.
And he's one of those guys where when Johansen's career is over, and I think he's got a lot of hockey left in him, hopefully. He's only 32 years old. But whenever his career is over, you could see him coming back to Nashville in some type of role, where it's an ambassador role
100%.
Or whatever. And Nashville fans would welcome him back wholeheartedly. We'd love to have him back. I mean, the guy was such a class act.
Oh yeah,
and was so good for this city. He was a major factor within those best years of this franchise has ever seen.
That playoff run, man.
And we'll always have to wonder if we could have had Ryan Johansen in that Stanley Cup final, how big of a difference he could have made.
Yeah, crazy.
But yeah, all right. So now, got to tell you about DraftKings, our other sponsor with our promo code THPN. DraftKings right now. So we got baseball going on right now. We've got golf. We've got NASCAR. We've got NFL preseason. We've got some things going on, but we are still, of course, eagerly waiting for hockey to come back. But DraftKings is still here for you with a lot of good offers for you with our promo code THPN to get those bonus bets going. Let's tell you about those right now. So let's tell you about some current odds. Know the beautiful thing about being a sports fan. There's like 2 days in the whole year without a game. 2 days within the whole year without a game. With so much happening and so much action, that makes just about every day game day at DraftKings Sportsbook. It's super easy for first timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your first bet. It's really couldn't be any easier or any more simple. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get 150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet $5 only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or in West Virginia, visit www.100gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPENY or text HOPENY. That's 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus age varies by jurisdiction. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. Deposit and eligibility restrictions apply. See terms and responsible gaming resources at dkng.com/base. And that is, if you are new to DraftKings, you got to check this out. New customers bet $5, get 150 in bonus bets instantly. All right, so we got some other commenters jumping in here. Brando asks, is Friedman doing 32 Thoughts by himself now?
I honestly have no idea.
Yeah, I haven't listened to
Jeff America isn't on there anymore.
Yeah, I'm sure he would probably find a new co-host for that eventually. Maybe he's doing it solo right now until he can get the season started. He's probably because that's the number one hockey podcast. I got to think by a long shot.
Oh, yeah. Elliot Friedman is like the insider for the NFL.
So he could probably get a lot of good co-hosts to jump in on with him. He's just probably trying to figure that out. But yeah, so now let's preview the defense, Max. Let's get into that here. We're just past the hour mark of episode 243, live edition of Catfish on Ice, part of the Hockey Podcast Network, of course. And let's get the projected lineup on the screen here for this upcoming season as we preview the defense. And then, of course, we will also be previewing the forwards. And then in the next episode 244, we'll preview the forwards. And then we'll preview the goalies in episode 245. And by then, we will be right on the doorstep of training camp. So there it is. Preds Preview 2024-25, the defense. We got it on the screen there for our YouTube viewers, our Facebook viewers as well. So Max, this is just like kind of the projected lineup according to Daily Faceoff. And also, I mean, unless you're just really just trying to go out on a limb here, it's pretty safe to say that's going to be your starting 6 defensemen for game 1. Or do you think it's not that set? Do you think there's more to be settled here?
No, I actually think that's exactly how I would do the pairings is there. I mean, technically, I mean, Yossi, I think is going to be on the right with Shea being on the left. That's the only thing I can really correct. But, like, no, that's exactly how I see it going. I think Yossi and Shea, obviously, those are going to be the top 2 defensemen on this team. I actually think their games complement each other pretty well. So I like that first pairing a lot. Lazon Carey had the chemistry from last year. Don't break them up. Stastny and Shen, they play decent hockey together too. So, yeah, there's no reason to break those up. I think the biggest question, if anything, I really kind of talked about it a few minutes ago was what's going to happen with Dante Fabro? And I hear you, and I very much understand, the guy to have like that as a really good 7th defenseman is really good, but I don't know. He's making $2.5 million. And, we saw Mark Del Gaizo last year. He looked pretty decent in action. Barry Trotz has talked about Adam Wilsby. He thinks he could be in contention this year. I just don't think the $2.5 million for Dante Fabro is worth keeping on the books when you have other guys, other options who could come up. And again, you're kind of crunched for cap, and if you get the cap relief from the Johansen penalty being removed, that helps. But like, I don't know, especially with this team, because especially with the question there is with Tommy Novak being able to play in the top 6, you're going to want flexibility to make deals at the trade deadline this coming year. And I guess with Dante Fabro, you could still move him in the season. And I don't see a way that like he's going to be an untouchable commodity. But like, I think the team is better off moving him and moving that $2.5 million off the books than keeping him as a 7th defenseman. And you have Mark Del Gaizo who could be a 7th defenseman and Adam Wilsby who could step up as well.
Yeah. No, I think that you're better off trading him if you can find the right offer, but it's going to be hard. I mean, you got to patiently wait for that. I don't think anyone's beating down the door to get Dante Fabro right now.
My question kind of is, we're kind of intertwining all these topics here. Could you pair Dante Fabro in a trade with Yaroslav Askarov? And one team One team I could think that I wouldn't mind at all them going to the San Jose Sharks.
Yeah.
That I think if I'm Trotz, that's one thing.
Well, I think that's a really, really solid thought you just brought up there, Max, and I totally agree with you. Trying to think bigger here, bigger picture here. If you're going to trade Askarov and try to package in Fabro, Trotz definitely has to be thinking about that right now.
Definitely increases your leverage.
It increases your leverage, especially considering a team like the Sharks possibly. Yeah. I don't know their defensive corps at all, but I will say that
they did just trade for Cody Ceci.
But they lack a lot of resources. They lack.
Really
I mean, they're as deep into a rebuild as you can possibly get into, and so a player like Dante Fabro, who's still relatively young, would be a great addition for the Sharks. I mean, because I think in the right situation, Fabro's a top 4 defenseman for sure.
Yes.
In the right situation.
Yes.
Not on every team, but for some teams, he should be a top 4 defenseman. And so a team like the Sharks, he would be featured more. He'd get heavy minutes. The pressure would be off a little bit. You got to think, Fabro was thrown into the fire fast.
He really was.
I mean, he really was. 19, 20. I think he was 20. He started playing heavy minutes for the Predators at age 20, I believe.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the guy's been in it. You forget how long Fabro's been around, and yet how young he still is. So I think a fresh start at a rebuilding team would be a great landing spot for Fabro. Sharks could be a good spot for him for sure. So I love that you bring up that point. But let's also think about it from this perspective. I'm not entirely set that Schenn's going to be an every game starter. He's a year older. And what's the thought process of Fabro playing with Stastny on the third pairing?
I would like it. I mean, you don't really have anyone. I mean, actually, no. Dante Fabro can be physical. No, I actually kind of like Stastny and Fabro. I think because Fabro's kind of a more defensive guy. Stastny's more of an all-around kind of skating offensive defenseman. I think their games would kind of complement each other well.
So we make jokes all the time, like no one's going to trade for Luke Schenn because his cap hit and stuff, but his cap hit's not that much higher than Fabro's, I don't believe. I think it's slightly higher.
One of the things that could boost Luke Schenn's value is for as much as the Preds fan base, and I understand why, they don't like him as much, but Luke Schenn, and I really don't think you can deny this, he is one of those guys who it really seems like a culture guy. Like a guy that any team would love to have in their locker room. And Barry Trotz and Steven Stamkos too talked about like what a role he played. And Stamkos here and how he's done really well in the locker room and how much the team really likes him being there.
So look, Schenn's making $2.75 million, Fabro's making $2.5. So if you're trying to trade Fabro, yeah, he's younger, he's got maybe the more longevity, but if you can find why can't you maybe possibly package Luke Schenn in a trade? With Askarov?
Maybe because Fabro's several years younger, and Fabro's only got 1 year left in his contract.
Schenn's got 2. I get it, but I'm just saying. All I'm saying is, look, Fabro's the easier player to trade. I'm not arguing that. What I'm saying is, don't completely overlook the fact that Schenn could not be traded in some weird scenario.
It could. Way less likely, I think, but you never know.
You never know. That's what I'm saying. And so my point is, if Schenn's out of the picture, or if you plan on at least rotating him out, he's a year older. He's 34 years old now. You can rotate Fabro and Schenn out easily to play with Stastny. Is kind of like the point I'm trying to make.
No, definitely.
Until he is traded, if he's traded.
I mean, it's hard to really compare because different coaches, even GM, but like. A lot of people don't remember in 2022 when the Preds essentially had 7 defensemen with Yossi, Fabro, Lauzon, Carrier, Borowiecki, Fabro. I can't remember exactly who was on there, but they were rotating Borowiecki and Lauzon a few games, and it didn't really happen because Borowiecki ended up getting a terrible concussion that ended his season. But they were kind of we didn't really see them end up rotating. But the point is that similar thing could end up happening with Shen and Fabro. So you're right, but I personally would think they're better off trading one of the two. But
Yeah, there probably are, especially if you can get good value. But don't just trade Fabro for the hell of it either.
No, I don't think
so. Like you need to hold out here because the asking price can always go up so much higher as the season progresses and you get closer to the 2025 trade deadline. You don't want to rush into trading Fabro if you don't have to.
Yep.
You know, and then you trade, worst case scenario, you trade him in 2025 before the deadline, you know? And it's unfortunate because you want Fabro, much like we feel about Cody Glass, deserves to be starting. He shouldn't be a healthy scratch. But again, it's a numbers game. You only got so many starting positions available. But man, the more I think about it, and I've been a big defender of Luke Shin. That guy gets a lot of hate from the fan base. I've been a big defender of him. But the more I think about it, I am not against Fabro playing with Stastny. But I don't see a very likely scenario where Shin gets benched very often. Because Trotz and Brunette have made it very clear that they have a love for the veterans and the pedigree.
And they really, and much as the fans don't like it, they really do like Luke Shen. They do.
So how do we feel about here's my big weakness with this projected defense. I think they're going to get some offense. I think this is one of the better offensive upside defensive corps I've seen from the Predators in a long time. Like even that third, not so much Luke Shen, but Spencer Stastny, assuming he can develop a little bit more his offensive game. He could provide you some, what I like to call bonus offense. You know, anytime you get any type of offensive production from your third defensive pairing, that's just money in the bank. That's just just cherry on top.
If Carrier can improve his offensive game, which we know he's capable of.
Yeah. We got a good comment here from John on YouTube. They say, I'm ready to pass Fabro on to someone else. He's improved, but not enough. I want to keep seeing him. But not enough that I want to keep seeing him in the lineup.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And, you know, like a lot of people feel like that Fabro's kind of hit his ceiling. Like he's kind of already given you what he's going to be. He's had plenty of time to be a little bit more of an offensive type of player, and he just hasn't done it. And so I think that's where a lot of fans feel about that, is that he's kind of capped out, and the best of what we're going to get out of Fabro we've already seen. But the guy is still only 26 years old. Right. So, but I do get where John's coming from there for sure. But here's where I feel like the biggest weakness for this team is going to be when it comes to the defense. It's not going to be, I think they're going to be plenty, I think they're going to have some good offensive characteristics. Jeremy Lauzon's improved offensively. I'm really excited about what Alexander Carrier, a rejuvenated Alexander Carrier, can bring to this team now that he's been brought back. And I like Carrier's defensive metrics as well. Of course, Jeremy Lauzon just set the NHL hits record for a single season. So we know what he's going to bring. And we know what Yossi and Shea are going to, once they can work out some chemistry, we know what they could possibly bring. But I'm kind of worried about this defensive corps maybe getting shredded a little bit against faster teams. I'm a little worried about that.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you talk about Luke Shen.
And even Spencer Stastny, I know he's fast and he's younger, but is he ready to be trusted on the defensive end? And even Lauzon, he's a heavy hitter.
That's true. I mean,
Lauzon,
I don't think Carrier are slow. They're not like blazing fast guys, though.
Well, Carrier's a good guy. I'm not, but like Lauzon, of course, we always worried about him taking too many penalty minutes. But overall, I think it's a really solid defensive corps. I would give it, like, if I got to give it a preseason grade without them playing their first game, I'd give it a solid B, maybe even a B+. I think on paper, it looks really good. I'm not too worried about it. I do kind of worry about them getting carved up a little bit against really fast teams.
The only guy on the defense I really, really worry about that is with Luke Shen. I don't think this defense is necessarily the fastest defense in the world, but overall, I don't think they're the slowest either.
And again, that's why I think Fabro would be an upgrade over Shen in that spot. Not that Fabro's a fast guy either necessarily, but we'll see. I'm pretty excited though. I do like this defense a lot. I do.
Yep.
So that's our preview for the defense. We're going to preview the forwards next week in episode 244, if my math is correct. I think we're 244 next week. Yeah, we're 243 today.
Yep.
All right. So now we've reached the end of the episode, but we got to get our Titans update. It's Titans talk here with Max Greenberg, and make sure you preface that by getting us caught up on expectations. What are your expectations for this team, realistically speaking? I want you to give me you're going to have to put it out there now. You're going to have to put it out there now. I want you to predict their record. What's their record going to be, win-loss record, and what's their ceiling? And yeah, of course, I want you to get us caught up on what happened in the last preseason game. I know they beat the Seahawks. Yep. I know wins aren't a big deal, but like in the preseason, but also some good things, some positives that you took away from that preseason win. And then kind of predict their win-loss record.
Yeah. So first of all, I'll do the win-loss record. I've had it for a while, and I'm going to say now. I think the Titans this year are going to be 8-9. I think we have a really, really tough start of the we have a really tough start of the year. The first 7 games are going to be a gauntlet. I think we're going to start with that 2-5. Middle of the year, I think
refresh real quick. Refresh the fans, including myself. Honestly, what are their first 7 games? Just if you got the opponents in front of you.
I think Bears, Jets, Packers, Dolphins, Colts division game, at Buffalo, at Detroit. Pretty tough.
Pretty tough. I mean, is the NFL really ever easy? But like,
that's especially.
How do you how do you feel about that season opener to the Bears? I mean, they got a lot of like hype around them because they got Caleb Williams. I feel like that's a game the Titans could steal.
I think that's honestly one of the easier games in the stretch. The games I'm really worried about. Packers, I think that's a pretty clear loss. I think Dolphins on the road, I don't see that one happening.
Buffalo's probably a loss.
Buffalo's a loss. At Detroit, that's a loss. So that's 4 games where I'm
I see where you're coming from. Yeah.
After that, you got a stretch of New England at home, Los Angeles Chargers. I think that's a very winnable game, even though it's on the road. Minnesota Vikings.
Justin Herbert though. Justin Herbert, man, that dude
he hurt his foot. He has a plantar fasciitis or something.
So he's going to be out like what, this whole season?
I don't know about the whole season, but also they don't have like any receivers except.
All right.
They really don't have much. Anyway.
All right, I got you.
Vikings, Texans, that's a loss. Commanders, that's a winnable game. Then you got the Jaguars. Then you have the Jaguars, but then you end really tough again because you got the Bengals, Colts on the road, Jaguars on the road, and then Texans. So you got the Bengals and then 3 straight divisional games.
I'm so mad about the Texans. Like, they're legit going to be good.
They are. This sucks. But anyway, as far as, things that happened in the past few games, I think there was a lot of ups and downs, especially in the last game. I thought last game the team had a lot. Granted, last game, so first the Titans preseason game, they played 2 of the series with the starters. And this past game, they didn't play starters at all. There were quite a few more penalties for my liking, a lot of more on the offensive line and special teams. I thought Mason Rudolph played well, and the defense outside of 2 drives, I thought held their own very well. But really what I want to do, and well, first of all, before I get into what I was going to get into, Johnny asked the question, is there a kicker controversy after the Titans?
Yeah.
The guy made a 59-yard field goal, had the game-winning field goal Saturday as well. No, there's not. Brian Callahan came out and all but said no. Nick Folk's job is still safe. I was kind of caught up in the moment. I was kind of thinking that at first, but Brian Callahan was pretty quick to shoot down those rumors. Nick Folk should still keep his job. But the main thing I want to add, because not a ton from last episode has changed, I don't think really. But I want to talk about 4 players, shout out 4 players, 2 on offense, 2 on defense, who have really caught my eye. I'm not saying other guys have not done well, but these 4 players have really caught my eye in these past few games. Number 1, and start the guys on offense. Jaquan Jackson, the 6th-round pick out of Tulane, the slot receiver. Going just a few short weeks ago, I was talking about that 6th receiver spot in the Titans was wide open. because it was mainly the guy, whoever's going to win the kickoff or the punt return job, which that was between Jaquan Jackson, of course, Kearis Jackson, Kyle Phillips, and Mason Kinsey. But it looks like Jaquan Jackson's really running away with it. He had a really good punt return in the first game. He had a lot of really good catches in this past game against Seattle. One thing also I've noticed, and before you're going to laugh at this, yes, the Titans have not even had this over the past few years. Jaquan Jackson has shown a lot of really good judgment, knowing sometimes when to just fair catch the punts or just stay away. Because a lot of times with these punt returns, it's not just how good the returns are. It's sometimes about the returns you don't make. Sometimes just making the smart decisions, not putting your team in danger and not muffing those punts. Jaquan Jackson, I think, has been really, really smart with that. And again, I think so far he's really running away with that 6th receiver job. So that's my first shout out. Second shout out goes to a guy that nobody really saw coming. I don't even think the coaches did either. David Martin Robinson, the undrafted tight end out of Temple. And these past 2 preseason games, he's caught some passes. He's been involved in blocking too. He's done a lot of really good things, and he's been consistent in those games. Brian Callahan the other day came out and said, we're now considering keeping 4 tight ends on this roster. I think that's a testament to how well David Martin Robinson has played in these games. And again, I don't think that anyone, even the coaches, really thought there was much of a possibility he would be in the mix, but he's making them think now. So that's another one. Going on to defense, the first guy I want to shout out, edge rusher Jalen Harrell, the 7th-round pick out of Michigan. There was hype from the first day of training camp around him saying he could be a good player. Brian Callahan has called him a strong rotational player. And in the last game against Seattle, he had 2 sacks. They weren't in coverage sacks either. Like he got around the tackle and even one of them, he even forced a fumble too. I'm at the point now, and I think a lot of people are thinking that his roster spot's a lock now. Jalen Harrell has played really, really well. And the last guy, last but not least, and honestly, he's kind of saving the best for last here. The best player, I think, by far this preseason, at least in the games so far, Chance Campbell. My goodness. The 6th-round linebacker from 2022, not drafted by Rand Carthon, but man, and he's had some injury issues in the NFL, but man, these past 2 preseason games, he's been absolutely everywhere, blitzing the quarterback, in coverage.
And was he coming into the preseason as a roster bubble type of player?
Yeah.
So he's earning his spot on the team.
He's earning his spot.
All right.
In training camp, he came on the unofficial depth chart as like a top 4 in the rotation, I believe. Like Chance Campbell is absolutely
good for him. That's awesome.
At the point where like you cannot like take his roster spot, and it feels good. And I hope he can stay healthy, because he's had injury issues, and last year the latest injury was I don't know that they didn't say the injury, but I believe he must have torn his ACL or something, because he had a knee injury that happened, a non-contact injury during warm-ups of a game. Like, it's brutal.
I love it. I just love it when you see a player that just like earns it in training camp and finds a roster spot.
All of it behind him, and again, like barring like him absolutely blowing it in this next week, he's going to make this roster. And I can't say enough good things about how well Chance Campbell's performed this training camp preseason.
All right, good stuff. Really excited about the upcoming Tennessee Titans season, and of course, we're going to be overloaded with sports very, very soon. We're going to get you out of here with this, everybody. Wanted to share this. Saw this from a Facebook post. Kind of crazy. We're going to put on here on the screen every team's last MVP in the NHL, and of course, the Predators have never had one. But I want to ask the question to get us out of here. I'll ask Max.
Yep.
First of all, it's so hard to win MVP in the NHL, but there's the list there of every team's last MVP. So you look at the teams that have never had an NHL MVP.
Wow, that's a lot more teams than I thought.
I know. I was shocked too. So let me run through it.
Wow.
The Flames.
Half the list.
Yeah, the Flames have never had an MVP. The Hurricanes, the Blue Jackets, the Stars. I was really surprised the Stars have never had it.
The Stars.
I mean, they had back in the day. They had Brett Hull. They had Mike Modano.
Even the Panthers, like I know
Panthers have never had one,
and it's more recent for them. But them never having one.
Ottawa Senators are on there. The Sharks.
San Jose's never had one.
Well, that's not that
But
surprising.
even though they didn't win a cup, they had some good teams for a year.
Yeah, but they've only been around since the early '90s. That's still not a long time.
Oh, man.
Out of all those teams that have never had one, I think the biggest surprise for me was the Stars. But
I honestly, San Jose is a huge surprise for me.
and then you look at some of the teams in their last MVP. It's been a long time. The New York Islanders haven't had an MVP since 1979.
Red Wings since '94.
Yeah, Sergei Fedorov. I don't know if I've ever told a lot of people this, but
Rangers since '92.
So when I was growing up as a kid, we didn't have the Preds yet. I'm gonna get so much hate for this, but I was actually kind of a Red Wings fan because you're a kid. Well, you're a kid. You're a kid. Listen to me. When you're a kid, you just cheer for the best team.
Right.
That's what you have. Like, I mean, we're talking like I was like 8. I wasn't even like 10 years old yet, probably. Yeah. And so like Steve Yzerman, Sergei Fedorov, Chris Osgood. Like, I mean, that was the flavor. That was just the team to cheer for. I'm in no way a Red Wings fan now and never was. But just when you're a kid, you pick a team. You pick the team that's winning. That's what you do when you're a kid.
You're a big man for admitting that.
We're in a safe space here, all right? Yeah, I'm being honest with everybody here. Don't come at me, all right?
I appreciate the upfrontness.
Yeah, we always got to be. So let's ask ourselves this to close out episode 243 here. Who is the most MVP caliber player on the Predators right now? Would you say it's Philip Forsberg? Would you say it's Roman Josi? Would you say it's Steven Stamkos? Would you say it's UC Saros? I'm not saying that any of those four are going to win the MVP because I would not be crazy enough to say that because it is so incredibly difficult to win MVP in this league. And I can't pick any four of those. Mike Twitter. Oh, I forgot Mike Twitter's in. I got to say what's up to Mike Twitter. He jumps in late, but Mike Twitter is an OG listener of this podcast. He's always been on all the live podcasts. Mike Twitter, it's good to see you, man. Yep. He says, hello, everyone. He says, I guess I joined at the very end. We'll listen on Spotify mañana. Hope everyone's feeling good. He says hi to everybody. Yep. And he ends it with, we need an MVP. And he throws in Ryan O'Reilly.
The answer. My personal one is my guy. I got to say Josi. I just don't think, O'Reilly does too, but like, I just think few players, I don't think there's a player on this team. And again, O'Reilly is one of the guys that's the case, but I just think there's not a player on this team who impacts the game at both ends of the ice the way Josi does.
That's a really good way to put it. I've got a 2-part answer here. Sorry. So I think if we're just talking who has the best chance on this team to win to win the Hart Trophy one day, I would actually say Saros. And it's so hard for goalies to win MVP. But the reason why I say that is what happens if maybe one day, one season, somehow in these next 8 years that he's signed, that he just goes full on just crazy beast mode and figures out a way to just put up some of the best numbers a goalie's put up in a long time. I think he has an easier way to possibly win MVP. But I think Josi is the more fair, most valuable player to pick for this team. Forsberg, it's so hard for a player like Forsberg to win MVP because he's at a winger. Yeah, so he's at a loaded position where, it's hard. He can have a 90-plus point season, and there could still be 10 players ahead of him with more points. So it's just a really hard position for him to set himself apart. So I would say that Saros has the most realistic chance to ever win MVP on this current Preds roster. But we're probably going to be waiting a long time before we see that drought end for the Predators to have an MVP. Yeah. It's probably a player that we don't even know about yet that will have to be the first Preds player to win MVP. But I found that list very interesting. I came across that today. All right, so there you have it, folks. We're going to get out of here. It's an hour-and-a-half long episode for you here in late August. Getting closer to that season starting. We're getting closer to training camp. It's been a fun one. It's been a heated one. It's been an emotional one. Thanks for listening, everybody. This has been Catfish on Ice episode Ep-243 with Chad Minton and Max Greenberg. Hit subscribe below. If you've enjoyed what you've watched on YouTube tonight, hit the like button, comment on the show, and hit subscribe. It helps out so much. We've been presented by DraftKings and BetterHelp with promo codes THPN. You can listen to us on Spotify and all the major podcast platforms as well. We're signing off. Take care, everybody.
See you guys.